Hey there and welcome back. Today's training is all about decluttering your calendar. So in the last training, we went through some of the time management mistakes to avoid and also gone through an Asana tutorial. So I really hope that you enjoyed it, and always make sure that you're setting aside time to not only consume the content, but to take massive action and implement the content, right? So today in this training, I'm gonna talk about decluttering your calendar. And you actually might be chuckling because maybe your calendar actually doesn't have anything on it, right? Maybe you might find yourself super overwhelmed that you just don't even plan anything on your calendar and it's blank. That's okay too. So, but maybe you're on the flip side and you've got this appointment, this appointment, this appointment, and you just have so much stuff on your calendar that you've collected, but you're not really sure the purpose that it actually serves. Just like how in our physical environment, it's really easy to collect things if we're not aware of it. Thankfully, I grew up in a household where one of my parents, my mom, who I love, would simply buy things because she's like, yeah, I love it, I'm gonna buy it. And I'm like, where are you gonna put it? And she goes, I don't know, I'll find a place, right? And we can easily start doing that with our calendar if we're not intentional with how we wanna spend our time. We start to collect appointments that don't really have any sort of true value or impact on the goals that we have for ourselves to help us move forward. So what we're going to talk about in today's training is understanding your current situation and then understanding what your desired situation is and that you want, right? Every time we look at our life, where we're at now, and in our business, we have our current situation, which is our current circumstance. These are the facts of our life. These are the facts of our calendar. No one can argue with them in a court of law. We have that. And in order to really understand where our desired situation is, or what it is and where we want to go, it's important to know where are we at currently, okay? And we have to get honest with ourselves, and that's okay. When you get honest with yourself, whether you're doing this for your calendar or you're doing it for goal setting in business, this piece can be really challenging sometimes because it forces us to look at some of the things that are uncomfortable, right? Maybe we didn't hit the business goals that we had expected for our business this past year. Maybe we didn't, maybe we racked up debt, right? Whatever it is, it can sometimes be uncomfortable, but know that the process of moving through the discomfort is actually a sign of growth, and it's a sign of moving forward. So with the calendar, it's taking current inventory. So this can easily look like spending some time in your planner. It can take time looking at your digital calendar, but really just sitting down and saying, you know, what is the current state of my calendar? How do I use it? And what's working and what's not, okay? Then it's getting clear on the desired calendar. So how do you want what do you want your days to look like? What do you want to feel on a daily basis? How do you want to feel and think about your calendar? And most of the time, I bet for a lot of you, you probably feel like it's a very reactive state, that you don't have control over your calendar, that people are coming at you and like wanting your time. This is something that I struggled with, is I always thought that, you know, like I had no time left for me because everybody's trying to vie for my time. But it actually made me realize that I needed to set boundaries and practice saying no to protect and defend my time, right? So taking a current inventory, what's it look like? What's working, what's not? And then understanding, how do you want to feel about your calendar? How do you want to feel about planning? How do you want your days to feel? What do you want them to look like? What days do you want to do X, Y, and Z activities? Really just understanding, like, also to the desired piece is that as a business owner, the beauty is that you get to decide the times and the days you work. You really start to break out of this this mindset of like corporate is 40 hours a week. And the thing about that is the 40 hours a week is an old paradigm that was constructed because of the manufacturing space. Okay, and so then the 40 hours came from this one thing that is now instilled so much in corporate of like, you have to work 40 hours. But as you become a business owner, you start to realize that it's not really about the time necessarily as much as it is about the results that you produce. And really, you know, a lot of time management books will talk about, we actually have 4 to 5 hours max of deep focus capabilities, because after that, after the 4 or 5 hour mark, and everything else just becomes like a diseconomies of scale, where you spend 1 more hour but you don't get as much output as you do in the 4 to 5 hour range. Now, getting to a place where you can go into deep focus for 4 to 5 hours, that is also a skill and takes time to learn. Don't worry. Again, another training. But what I want you to take away here is that you as a business owner, you get to decide what you want your schedule to look like. Do you want to only work Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays? Do you only want to work 4 hours a day, Monday through Friday? Now, when you get into this desired and brainstorming, I want you to also know that when you think about how do you want to actually set up your calendar and what you want it to look like, it's not going to go from current to desired like that overnight, but the goal is to hold that vision and hold that desire. So letting that fuel you and being able to influence the decisions you make about your calendar today. So for me, I know that in the future, especially with kids potentially on the horizon, that I only want to work 3 days a week and I want to spend the other 2 days being able to show up 100%. Okay, so that is where I'm looking at when I make decisions in my schedule and my calendar and how I set it up, is the idea of like, how do I get to that place, right? And so here I want you to be able to brainstorm and dream about your calendar. What days would you do calls? All of that, right? And you can refer to the workbook that goes along with this to help you brainstorm, to give you that inspiration. Once we've decided current and desired, I want you to go through and make a list of all the activities that you are currently doing in your business. This is really key. We have to get really clear on like all the activities, which I'm going to show you an example of that in just a moment. But once we define the activities, we're going to move into what is called batching. You may have heard of batching if you tune into the podcast, and I love batching. And batching is all about doing like activities with like activities. And this is really key to productivity and efficiency, because every time you switch between doing one type of task to another, it's called context switching, you actually lose momentum and you lose capitalizing on that energy. So I used to do podcast interviews every single day of the week, almost at every single time of the day when we first started in 2015. Now, when I do podcast interviews, which actually doesn't happen that often, I do a lot more solo casts, I really only open up my calendar for one afternoon every single month, and I stick to that constraint unless someone who I want to bring on the show is like, hey, I'm not available that day, are you available this day? Then I will do it. But I really very much practice the constraint of setting up my calendar in a way that I know every month that Tuesday afternoon of the first week is really when I do my podcast interviews. So that looks like batching upon like activities with like activities. And then what we're going to do is we're going to do a color coordination within Gmail. And again, I'm going to show you the underlying process. So let's say you don't use Gmail, it's totally fine. I want you to think about how you can use this structure in your, maybe you use Microsoft, okay? How can you implement this sort of system in your calendar? Or excuse me, in your calendar, right? So let's take a look. This is an example. This might be a list of all the things that you do in a day's worth of work, or maybe a week. So let me make sure I have this here. Okay, perfect. You have content creation. Maybe it's podcast recording and production, but maybe it's YouTube, maybe you do blogging, maybe it's IGTV, whatever that is, right? You have sales calls, you have discovery calls. Maybe you've got one-on-one client, actual billable hours, if you will, work. You've got a course or a product that you launch or maintain, or maybe you're doing coaching. You've got a Facebook group that you check in on daily, whether it's paid or free. You've got networking calls, people who want to do networking or have you come speak on their podcast, PR activities. You've got the launch and promotion, you check email. You've got personal items. So you have a morning ritual, you have an evening ritual, maybe you work out, you eat lunch, you eat dinner, you eat breakfast. All of these things I want you to list out, because I'm gonna show you how this is gonna work in today's training. And you've also got, like, let's say travel time. If you go to and from into an actual office, but let's say if it's to and from for working out, if you have an appointment, you know, just really understanding, taking inventory of everything that you do on a daily and weekly basis, because this is part of decluttering your calendar, is also getting really clear on what are you actually doing so we can bring awareness to it, so we can be more intentional when we put it back. It's like Maria condoing your calendar. I just thought of that. Anyway, that's the thought process I want you to really think about, okay? So when we go to the calendar, it's gonna look like batching them. And so I am using my actual calendar and how I, you'll see when I show you my calendar, but I batch activities in executive, into content creation, into launch and promotion, personal, and then I've also got a general here. I've got it twice because when I recorded you couldn't see it. Anyway, I digress, but general, okay? So this looks like your executive tasks. You have a color coordination for executive. This might be weekly meetings, maybe it's with your team, but maybe you do a weekly meeting with yourself. You track your metrics, you've got money that you track, you do any sort of billing, whatever that looks like, paying yourself. Then you've got a content creation bucket. So that would look like anything for podcasting, podcast production, Instagram marketing, and then launch, promotion, and money. So this is anything that you would consider revenue generating activities. So this could be your sales calls, it could be discovery calls, it could be launches, promotions, maybe networking calls that's gonna lead to PR and getting you in front of your target audience. Then you've got personal. I think it's important to have a personal calendar to separate out. So this would be when you're waking up, maybe when you're grocery shopping, when are you working out, when are you getting ready for the day. So the goal is to take every activity that's on your calendar and really assign it to a bucket. And then also just a simple general, right? But the idea is that when you have this general calendar, you really want to think about how can I put it into executive content creation, launch, promo, or personal. And then again, the purpose of this is to start to become even more aware of the things that are coming on your calendar, because when you create that awareness by what's coming on your calendar, you can make better informed decisions about how you are spending your time, okay? So this concludes what we are talking about in today's training, but make sure you check out the next training that goes along with the decluttering your calendar, because I'm going to show you how to set this up inside of Gmail and really give you an understanding of what I'm talking about when I say categories and using color coordination. In the next training, I'm going to talk about how to throw away your to-do list and really get very specific on your calendar and how to actually plan so that the goals that you set, you can actually work backwards and put them on your calendar. So then it gets really clear about what you're doing so you can protect and defend your calendar. I will see you in the next training.